from our side, we aim to expand and convey the key message about our happy life in Seoul. And we thought about how to create another sympathy or communication in the exhibition that Seoul can provide. So, I mean, our organization is a bit different because different from the exhibition in Canada, we organize the exhibition into 4 parts. So one is definition about happiness, and second is status of data, which show the now think about your yesterday, examine how you scientifically measure and study happiness, and how survey actually measure and how it is possible to measure the concept of invisible happiness through the video of Gallup. Also, in terms of materiality, so because we talk about the surface as one of the happiness agenda, so we try to express and then the surface of softness and comfort in our space. And then CCA exhibited in the light sky blue space, so a color of happiness and peace. And so we try to create a space with that meaning, but unfortunately we couldn't find the carpet of that color. Our color is much darker than we planned, but in the end it doesn't look that bad, doesn't it?
No, we think that the display, I mean, it's great, honestly. And I think that, this sort of blue environment that you mentioned, that is basically the setting where we are screening this newly produced video essay, is, of course, kind of has been strategically conceived to kind of refer a little bit to the sites or the stages where, conferences about happiness, happened in the past, in the recent years. And we have been somehow kind of researching and reading more and more about how you mentioned the color, the blue color, how, let's say, this is becoming a sort of a new trend in the, iconographic use of color from, let's say, the cliche connected to the green economy and the use of green to how blueness is becoming today a sort of a sort of a new reference connected to mental health and well-being. I don't know, Irene, if you agree on this point.
Yeah, and it also ties to the reference of like blue zones of happiness, that there are model cities where the citizens are the happiest in the world. So this motif and this connotation of the blue was something we kept coming across, and so it was very natural to become the key tone in the palette of the show, let's say.
And regarding maybe, we were discussing about the reaction of our audience and in the show in Montreal, and we would be curious to know how the public is kind of reacting in Korea about this relatively kind of newly conceived also design of the space. But in a way, the video essay, it's a sort of a unique way to combine in a linear sequence, contents in an exhibition in Montreal were at disposal, of course, of the viewer, but organized in a kind of a different way, because the spatial organization was not linear. So the viewer, in Montreal was kind of moving from stage to stage, with OKRM somehow designed the different rooms as in Montreal as set. And here we used somehow a similar kind of a strategy in terms of the conception of the space. There are all different sets. So the blue zone for, the video essay, and then the yellow-white soft room to contrast with the hard and gray environment of the call center in Omaha, and then this sort of a dark environment, the digital library, where it's possible to read our essays, to listen up interviews, to enter into the data in a sort of a kind of a immersive environment. But at the same time, you know, the video essay is like making a statement, which it's both a story of our research and at the same time a linear sequence of concepts making a statement about the exhibition that in Montreal was not existing and was more kind of a open, let's say, to the approaches of each visitor to combine and construct somehow. Yeah.
I think this is one of our challenge, our difficulties when we were planning the exhibition, that we know that from CCA in Canada, when it was exhibited, most of the exhibits was actually physical objects. And when it comes to Seoul, during this pandemic situation, all of them are digitalized, like the materials. We made a new film. We have the interviews as videos. We only have a little physical book, like the yellow book, and also Our Happy Life, the publication as a physical object. But otherwise, other materials are actually videos. And that was one of the challenge, because for us, it was, I think, the first time 90% of the materials are videos. And how do we get the visitors to be attracted and to stay in during their visiting time to watch all the videos and get to understand the contents as well? And how should we organize the space in order to, as you said, as a sequence of flow, to understand from the beginning how the exhibition started and what's the meaning of it, and then what kind of extra materials they can have a look at. So we kind of, that's why we divide it into 4 parts, and then divide it with, to separate them into different zones by using different colors, and also the materials are slightly different.
Yeah, no, I understand the challenge. I also understand, and I think we were very aware, and I mean, if in different way also in Montreal, and maybe with Irene we can reflect, you know, back about this, and also about, you know, the other venues of the show, how and again how the exhibition has been changing also. Traveling. One reflection that I can make now, Winnie, about what you mentioned, so the challenging component of kind of guiding the visitor, but also constructing this sort of totally digital environment, is that, of course, we are really aware of the fact that today we are all, you know, basically having access to video in every moment of our life. Every second of our life is connected to a video screen. Basically, this exhibition could have been also kind of, accessed through just an iPhone. But what it was important for us, and this is connected to the topic itself of the show, is actually the creating of different type of experiences and atmospherical conditions to have access to a content. That's why we have been insisting and working a lot with you on the materiality of certain setting, on this sort of weird design of a blue room with pink chairs set in a sort of a hemicycle, or kind of a shape one aside the other to look at the projection. Because what was important for us also in Montreal was really kind of producing conditions that sometimes were also producing frictions between the content and the environment. The Now Please Think About Yesterday film, as I said, is somehow, to me, is a very kind of a strong, dry, psychological type of reflection and immersive kind of a journey through these questions about well-being, to how basically one of the leading companies in the world is tracking happiness, collecting these data, constructing these indexes. Everything somehow is start probably from the most emotional condition of our lives, the feelings, you know, the happiness, the anger, the sadness, and transform it into this sort of a data accessible to at the political level, and we did it probably in the softest space of the exhibition, or in the most welcoming. So for us, it was important that every set was defining this type of friction, was defining the sort of a collective, but at the same time very individualized and related to the self access to content.
Yeah, we also consider about the sitting typology based on the contents. Like she said, like for instance, for now, please think about yesterday. We also, in terms of materiality, we also use a carpet so that people could watch the video comfortably, and also we made because basically Korean doesn't feel comfortable sitting or lying down on the carpet, so we made a pyeongsang, which is the wooden bench, and made them sit there and then just sit very comfortably and then stay there for like a 20 minutes, watch the full video, and then think about about themselves, and then ask the same question to themselves, like, do you experience happiness during a lot of the yesterdays, etc. And then, for instance, for the digital library, we put the bin back, and then because we have a 40 minutes or over 1 hour video, so they has to sit down and then make themselves comfortable and then watch the full video from the beginning to the end. So we really hope that the visitor can fully understand, enjoy all the videos. That's also we considered. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, talking about Madrid, the environment was different, Irene, right? But following the same lines.
Yeah, in Madrid, we again had the carpet as a surface and we were one of 12 contributors to this group show called 12 Cautionary Urban Tales, and so we were in a very large exhibition hall in the way that the big group show was laid out with a simple beamed booth structure. We again wanted to reinforce this contrast of the softness with the data. We had the happiest country rankings presented there as well, and then the Now Please Think About Yesterday film. But then our space was defined with the graphics of OKRM printed on fabrics. And so you were surrounded by soft, very light, the color palette was light as well, fabrics with these questions, and you were invited to lay on the floor, sit on the floor, to watch the documentary. And again, there was this friction to set the mood, and even if the visitor maybe didn't necessarily take in all of the content amongst many other installations, we hope that just by the combination of the way that we translated something as dry as the world's happiest countries, by these graphic design decisions, these moves to transform that information in a particular way, referencing the stock market. Hopefully that would trigger and plant the doubt or question in the mind of the visitor to bring more reflection after the fact. Because in all the scenarios in Montreal and Madrid and in Seoul, there's always the challenge of expecting a lot from the visitor, expecting a lot of their attention and time.
Because I guess basically the visitors in Korea or in Seoul, they're very used to a lot of graphics or like a lot of information, either it's text or mixed with photos, posts or whatever inside the exhibition hall. But this time they come in, is all the screens, all the information are included in the videos. So basically they have to watch the video to get the information out, and then to understand and digest and to reflect. So it was a little bit challenging, but for me, as I observed, actually in the now, please think about yesterday, the space, we have the white carpet. And as Hyoeun mentioned, Koreans are not really used to sit on it or like step on carpets. But yeah, we have a little space that like a little platform. So the people will go up and we have the helpers to tell them you can actually step inside with your shoes and then step on it as well. You can sit on it. And so that's why we have the headsets as well as a speaker inside the space to like basically guide the visitors. You can sit on it and then listen with the headsets and also give a little larger impacts to listen the questions through the headsets. Basically, it's really feeling that I'm being interviewed. And then I can like really reflecting myself in my head as well at the same time watching the video. And I think that really helps the visitors to self-reflect on what really happiness or what happiness agenda, happiness index is.
I want to ask you something because, as I said at the beginning, one of the, let's say, most interesting aspect of this sort of a collaboration was also the possibility of developing within the framework of our questions, of our reflection, the case studies kind of rooted in Korea and maybe in Seoul, some of them. I'm wondering how was this type of collaboration on your side and how the audiences are kind of reacting to those stories and to basically this sort of double perspective.
They always fascinating about all the research and data and statistics and happiness, the ranking things. And then when they visit this exhibition, they expect something different. That's what I feel. And something about like, what is our happy life? And then just, what is the happiness things? But we start with the happiness ranking and then political perspective and then economic perspective, and they realize and then they also learn different perspective about happiness and then different translation about happiness. And then when they reach to the digital library and then when they see the Korean case study, because we create 5 research topic which initiate from the daily life, which is rambling and then e-commerce development and apartment, the living well-being, and then Starbucks City about the absence of public space, etc. So I think the Seoul citizen can relate well with their life, and then at the same time, the relatively easy to understand the contents and then relation with the CCA materials.
And I think they come in and realize, they come in and find, I'm coming to see an exhibition called Our Happy Life. And maybe at the end they find, where's my happy life is and how happy my life is. Basically, I think that's what they brought back home with them after the exhibition. Because they first come in and see the whole is the happiness ranking. And most of them basically will search, where South Korea is. And they will spot is around 50 or the 60th in the middle of the rankings. It's not low, it's not like the highest, of course. But then it's like, okay, Korea is like this, but I'm not that unhappy, or not, I'm not that happy. And that's how they start with the reflection, basically, from the rankings. And then they go into the blue room and they will see, okay, but the happiness report is actually used by the policy makers. And then they go into the Gallup room, now please think about yesterday, and then they start reflecting more. And then when, as Hyoeun mentioned, they actually even feel it more from the daily life, from the Korean case studies. And I think that's quite interesting of how the mood transition, basically. And you can see how they react through the exhibition journey, basically. And I think how they're taking in the contents are quite different. Some are really going through all the materials that we put on the table. Like we put actually the World Happiness Report on the table that they can flip through, as well as our Happy Life publication as well, so they can take a more closer look to all the essays or all the photos that you have included. So I think that's how they're taking in like a different kind of point of view as well, because it's quite different from the Korean approach of what happiness is, I guess. Especially is all in, well, from the CCA materials is speaking in English, but watching in the subtitles, so they don't really taking in immediately, like as quick as if it's speaking in Korean. So yeah, that's I think that's one of the feeling of the Korean visitors as well.
And then visitor also architect. They like citizens by Bougainville architecture a lot, because as Linnea de Graaf said in his interview, many architects don't take happiness as a design guideline, and they also can be very careful, as it is not as to save it as a single visualized image. But after I explain about this collage and then what kind of element contained in this image, they also feel the same thing. And then it seems that every element in his collage contained the meaning of happiness and also the individual happiness agenda, because they have a old building and new building combined together, and then there is a physical and built environment and nature together, and then the citizen with all the families and friends and together. So they really like the citizen. And then I also thought that this can be maybe the role of an architect, to be able to design the city and architecture for the happiness of people like this. That's also what I'm thinking.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're mentioning about the reaction of your audience, but you mentioned the word like the journey of the show. No, it's like if it's becoming a sort of a stage by stage, a sort of a kind of a having awareness of what the point of the exhibition. But this is and that at the beginning is sort of unexpected. But this is the same reaction that, of course, we had in Montreal and we had in Madrid as well. This is part of the logic of the show, playing with this sort of ambiguity on purpose, in the sense that the exhibition in itself is basically conceived to make you think about how something so volatile and basically apparently impossible to track in the last kind of years started to become a data. No, so this is the first thing that position you as a viewer in a different perspective toward the content, because you start basically entering in a sort of a in a new dimension where happiness is considered a new science today, and where this sort of an industry emerged around it. But this is kind of important for us because, as I said at the beginning in my introduction, it's a sort of a kind of a perspective which seems quite far away from space, because it enters from the political and the economic domain, but actually arrives to question somehow some of the points that are fully spatial and related to the construction of the built environment. And this somehow reflection on the fact that there are construction markets kind of focusing entirely, as you said, Hyoeun, on the idea of the surface as a sort of a placebo effect for well-being. The fact that sustainability and mental health parameters, I mentioned, we mentioned the green and the blueness, we can talk about, but the problem is that all these sort of conditions are pushing us in front of a very clear scenario where the production of space is actually less influential than before, where the architect, as we state in our introductive text, is somehow vanishing or kind of losing that sort of influential capacity of having impact on space, because the construction and the leading kind of a market is more driven by the making of experiences and the making of surfaces or the furnishing of space instead of designing it. But the conclusion for us is really a reflection in the end on the role of the architect herself and himself, arriving to pose ourselves a question, a bit provocative or just drafted to trigger other reflections. So who are the designers of our cities? The ranking producers are kind of more influential and impactful than architects today. We've been in dialogue with one of the contributors of our book, Dean Simpson, who has been kind of exploring the branded identity of Copenhagen and an influential role of different publishing companies, more impactful than politicians or urban planners into the making of space. So this is exactly, I think it's interesting when you talk about journey, Winnie and Hyoeun, because it's really the sort of a process of being aware of how actually is a process of being aware and a trajectory that goes behind the scene of urban space making, architecture, conception, and market of space today. So those famous gray areas I was mentioning at the beginning related to why the CCA is interested in these gray areas, because dissecting what is behind the production of space, you understand which are the frictions, the problems, and probably you pose yourself also a question, which is how we need to kind of position, architecture making practice in a context where these are the conditions we have to live and work with. And it's not a rhetorical question on our side. It's more like how do you react? It means how do you find a new position according to this new agenda? How do you manage, to kind of redefine an approach in this kind of context where the emotional capitalism and this market of space somehow is changed compared to pre-2008 environment. But our reflection in the video essay also terminates with, of course, it was also an occasion for us to update our narrative, reflect about the present a little bit.
So basically from what you mentioned from the reflection, I think, as I mentioned, the Korean visitors to our exhibition, when they come to the digital library and see the Korean case studies especially, they feel that actually their daily lives are related to architecture as well. For like just general public, they might not be thinking, for example, the Starbucks city, they might not realize that actually, every 5 minutes or every few meters there's a Starbucks for them to sit down to just have a chat, but actually they have to pay for it. They should have like a public space in between instead of paying to sit down to chat with your family and friends. That gave them like a realized, their daily life is actually, what if the government have a park or just a bench in between the Starbucks, they can have another space to sit down instead of paying. And also the right of due as well. The balcony space is also like the recent architecture designs, they have included the balcony area inside the house. And that actually, as you mentioned, have another side business. The people start to decorate the inside balcony with the plants, or like as a camping area for the children, or like for extra laundry space.
Yeah, and then also for the plus and minus of them. And then they are always really enjoying and then feel very convenient by the e-commerce and then delivery service, which is, very big benefit for the Seoul citizen. But the video also show the issue behind of the development, which is lots of leftover and trash, and then pollutions, and then all the delivery workers. We also think about the issue that we have to deal with. So that kind of reflection and the message we deliver.
Yeah, it was really, really impressive and brilliant, the work that Society of Architecture did in first absorbing and following our curatorial framework, and then being able to inject all those layers of nuance and putting that friction that Francesco mentioned in to really put a magnifying glass to these small details that in the everyday that we might take for granted, and highlighting the spatial dimensions of our rituals and routines. They really understood all these perspectives that we wanted to touch on in our research and our storytelling. And we had to work across time zones and distance, and we didn't have that many meetings, but I feel like the communication and the translation of during this whole process with Hyoeun and with Society of Architecture was super successful and effective, and we in turn learned about daily life and spatial issues in Seoul. So it was rewarding in that sense as well. And the project can be seen as this living, reflexive process, as Francesco was talking about.
So are you kind of organizing any public kind of a program related to the show? If we think to this project as a sort of really a living organism, is always about, we use the metaphor of the journey, the exhibition as an incubator of questions, and then traveling, of course, it mutates. Exhibition changes, the questions also changes, the case studies changes, and I guess also the dialogue with the audience changes.
Yes, so as we mentioned, we actually have the docent tours to bring the visitors in like a limited time to understand the exhibition contents in a shortest time, basically, because during this pandemic time, our exhibition hall is actually operating in 3 time slots. In each time slots, we only have 2 hours. 2 hours, the visitors are allowed to be in the hall. So the docent tour is around 30 minutes, and then it gave the visitors another hour to have a look of the rest of the videos. That's one of how we link the exhibition contents and try to transmit and convey the message to the visitors. And the other ones is actually our education team. They have produced an education worksheet, and the target audience is for the elementary school students to come and do the activities in the workbook with their parents or like the guardians. So the workbook is basically, they have pages they can fill in to either draw or like colorings and follow the directions in the workbook. Different parts of the exhibition, they have different kind of directions to do, or like activities to do in each parts of the exhibition. So to guide them through and to try to tell them what this part of the exhibition is trying to tell them, or what kind of question it brings, and what kind of answers they are going to make. And so the answers or their thoughts to reflect in the workbook, in the drawings or colorings kind of way of method.
Well, thank you very much. I think again, on behalf of the CCA, I really want to thank you, your work. The time together we spent together was really interesting for us. As Irene mentioned, it was really a dialogue in the purest sense. I mean, absorbing kind of and discussing and sharing. and at both level, institutional, curatorial, and also in terms of the production. I think it's been really kind of interesting for us to work on the design of the show. For us at the CCA, as you know, the design is, tightly connected to the content, and it becomes content in itself, of course. I mean, not only for us, but it's an important point, and the design of an exhibition is not just a tool. And discussing with you about it has been always kind of very interesting, because again, it goes back to this concept of an exhibition that transforms itself at many levels, even in the design form. Has been really interesting to see this kind of a third chapter of the show happening in Seoul. So on behalf of CCA and the director Giovanna Borasi, thank you very much for this collaboration and work together.
Well, thank you so much. We have experienced many situations during the creation and preparation. We also would like to thank Francesco and Irene and your team behind the scene for their effort and support to make the exhibition and this talk happen in spite of the time difference. I'd also like to thank the audience who is currently watching the clip, and I hope it shines you a different side and looking from the curatorial planning point of view of the Our Happy Life. So thank you for now. Good day to you, Francesco and Irene. And I really, really hope to see you in person soon. Yeah, that's one day we cannot make it. So thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
and we really hope to see each other soon. We share the same desire. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
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 Bye.